It was September 11th, and I was an airman in the U.S. Air Force. I was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and I worked at the National Air and Space Intelligence Center. And what that building mostly did was it did a lot of intelligence analysis, sent what they were able to discover from satellite feeds and imagery to various locations. Not a whole lot going on during peacetime, but but it was an important place, and they did important work. And it was just another morning, and I remember really well that that morning we were getting a new person into our organization where I worked at. I dealt mostly with computers, and we had a new person coming in. He called in that morning saying that he was having trouble getting onto the base, and he mentioned something about a plane flying into the World Trade Center. And you know, I didn't really know what he was talking about. There wasn't any TV set up where I was at. It was a very restricted area, so there were no cell phones. There wasn't a whole lot of internet access. So, but then he called in later, saying it was going to be even later, and and he kept talking about this plane. So there was one TV set up in the lunchroom area. So I went over to see what was going on, and that's when I saw that the planes had hit the building, and there was people just gathered all over the place, just watching these TVs. And I didn't go home for about 24 hours. They closed every gate on the base, and Wright Patterson is a very large base. Um, but until they knew everything was secure, and until they knew how they were going to handle entry, everything was closed. When they finally reopened the gates for regular personnel, they opened one gate, one out of probably 15. And before 9/11, everything was very relaxed. You had a sticker that was on your car, and it would have a month and it would have a year. And if that looked okay, you were driving up to the gate, they'd just wave you through. Everything was fine. Everything changed after that. It was random inspections on cars. It was every single person in the car had to have an ID to get in. Um, Everything was super strict. Everything was double, triple checked. And for a few weeks after that, we went from 8-hour days, 5 days a week to 24/7. The computer room was supporting all these operations, and everybody was just keyed up. They had all these. They had this main kind of a situation room where the main people from all the different departments would funnel all this information in, and we were supporting these people, and that meant that we had to be there all the time. So we went from 8-hour days, 5 days a week, to 12-hour days, 7 days a week, and we just kept going and kept going. Eventually, about 2 months after 9/11, I ended up in Saudi Arabia uh, on a deployment to support the operations there. Again, mostly it was a collaborative environment where people were doing targeting, and I was helping with the computers and making sure all the servers were up and people had access to where they needed it. Um, but I was there for probably 5 months, from about November to sometime in April. And yeah, that's what I remember about it all. And they talk about things like Pearl Harbor, and people will say, you always remember where you were when it happened. And I always thought that was so cliche. And whatever. But I'll never forget it. When it happened, and everybody of my age can tell you where they were, and they can tell you what they were doing when it happened. It's just everything just stopped on September 10th. You wouldn't recognize the world as it was then if you didn't live in it. Nobody really worried about anything. Everything was super relaxed. There was no ISIS, there was no Al Qaeda. People didn't think, oh, there's going to be an attack. And just one day, everything just changed. And that's where I was when it happened.